You ever have one of those moments where every fiber of your being whispers no, screams that something is about to happen? That gut-deep sense that life is about to take a turn you didn't ask for but somehow can't avoid? That was me. Standing on the cracked driveway of a house that had seen better days, beige stucco walls, paint peeling like old sunburn, a mailbox so crooked it looked like it had given up hope years ago. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't spoiling for a fight. All I wanted was to check out a property I'd just closed on. But life has this funny way of handing you battles you didn't even know were on the calendar. Or maybe it wasn't life at all. Maybe it was Karen. She stormed out of her house like thunder, bottled up in yoga pants. No greeting, no pleasantries. No hey neighbor, just fire. You can't park here, she barked, her voice sharp enough to slice through the hot afternoon air. This is HOA property, I blinked, confused, calm, maybe even a little amused. I'm not in your HOA, I said. That's when her whole demeanor shifted. Her eyes narrowed, her face hardened, like I'd just spat on the crown jewels of her kingdom. She pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over the emergency dial, like she was about to save the nation from an invader. And I thought, this is it. This is where logic dies, and entitlement steps into the driver's seat. But before I tell you how it went down, I need you to stay with me. Because this isn't just a story about a Karen. No, this is about power, about perception, about what happens when truth collides head-on with entitlement. And let me tell you, if you've ever been underestimated, you've ever had someone try to bulldoze you with arrogance, you're going to want to stay till the very end. Trust me, this one doesn't end the way anyone expects. Let's rewind. Weeks. Earlier, I was browsing property listings. I wasn't hunting for a mansion. I wasn't chasing luxury. I just wanted something solid, something with potential. That's when I stumbled on this house. Foreclosed, neglected. It had weeds taller than kids playing in the street. The siding was tired, the roof sagging, but I saw through all that. I saw what it could be, and then there was the kicker. House sat literally a few feet outside of HOA boundaries. On paper, that one tiny detail meant everything. I closed the deal, got the keys, and drove out on that fateful day just to see it with my own eyes. I didn't even get a chance to breathe. In the silence of new ownership before she appeared, Karen, the gatekeeper, the self-appointed queen of all, she surveyed. You can't be here, she snapped. I forced a smile, tried to keep it light. Actually, I own this house now. Laugh sharp, dismissive, cut through me. That's impossible. This is HOA property. We have rules. I lifted the deed, crisp papers that smelled like victory and new beginnings. Not this one. This is outside your jurisdiction. She didn't even look at it, just pressed those digits on her phone like she was launching missiles. And there I stood, dumbfounded. Watching her call the cops on a homeowner standing in front of his own property. Pause. Let that sink in. Because this is the first glimpse of what happens when someone builds their entire identity on control. This wasn't just about a driveway. This wasn't about parking. This was about dominance. It's about someone so wrapped up in their narrative. That reality couldn't penetrate even when it was stamped in black ink. Minutes later, the cops arrived. 2 officers. Calm, professional, scanning the scene like they'd seen it all before. Karen sprinted to them like she'd just won a prize on live television. He's trespassing, she cried, pointing at me as though I were a criminal. He's violating HOA rules. One officer turned to me, composed. Sir, do you live here? I held up the deed. I own it. Took the papers, eyes moving over them with the precision of someone who didn't want to miss a single line. He nodded, handed them back, and turned to Karen. Ma'am, this property isn't part of your HOA. Her face. I'll never forget it. A frozen glitch like her brain had short-circuited. But it's in the neighborhood, she stammered. The officer was patient, professional, but firm. That doesn't make it part of the HOA. And in that second, I saw it. The power she carried imagined, inflated, like a balloon stretched to thin deflate, right in front of me. But if you think that was the end, you don't know Karen. She spun toward me, her voice trembling not from fear, but from fury. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "I didn't take the bait." I just turned, walked to my front door, slid the key into the lock, and stepped inside. A man on his own property. But here's where things got wild. Days later, my contractor called. His voice was tight, unsettled. "Hey man, this lady Karen, I think her name is she's been harassing us, saying we need HOA approval to paint, to fix the plumbing, to even park our truck." I felt that flash of anger, but I kept it buried. Instead, I dug. I asked around. What I learned made everything click into place. Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She wasn't just another homeowner. No, she was the self-proclaimed president of the HOA. Not elected, not official, just loud. Just relentless. But here's the twist. The HOA itself was falling apart. Finances in shambles. Houses defaulting on dues. A board that barely functioned. And the land I now owned, zoned for multi-unit development, I had choices. Real choices. So I did what Karen feared most. I made a move. I filed paperwork to convert the property into a duplex. All legal, fully permitted, and completely beyond her reach. When the news hit, she unraveled. She showed up, waving flyers printed in bold letters. "Stop the duplex. Protect our neighborhood." She went door to door like a campaigner, handing them out like Halloween candy, and I stood there watching. Watching entitlement thrash against the walls of reality. Watching fear dress itself up as community concern. But here's the part that still makes me shake my head. One morning, my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer. His voice carried a mix of disbelief. "An irony, you're not going to believe this," he said. "Karen's house her own house is in pre-foreclosure." I didn't laugh. I didn't celebrate. But deep down, something clicked. A balance. A poetic symmetry. I called the bank. Ran the numbers. Made an offer. 2 weeks later, the paperwork cleared. I didn't just own the neglected house outside the HOA anymore. I owned Karen's home. Take that in. It's the same woman who had called the cops on me for standing in my driveway, who had harassed my workers, who had tried to rule with imaginary power and now lived in a house with my name on the deed. I remember the knock. My hand against her door. She opened it, saw me, and her face drained of color. "I'm here to introduce myself," I said softly. "I'm your new landlord." Silence. The kind of silence that weighs heavy. She didn't argue. She didn't threaten. She didn't call the cops. She just stood there, and I let the silence stretch. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Now pause with me here. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't about crushing someone. It was about truth. About standing tall when someone tries to erase you. About persistence outlasting noise. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever had someone try to control you, dismiss you, make you feel small, this story is for you. And if you're still watching right now, I want you to do something. Hit that like button. Share this video. Drop a comment below and tell me if you ever dealt with a Karen. How did it play out? Did you win by walking away? Or by standing your ground? Because here's the thing, stories like this matter. They remind us that respect isn't handed out by people who shout the loudest. Respect is earned through patience, through persistence, through holding on to what's rightfully yours. And sometimes the sweetest justice isn't an argument or a clapback or even a victory in court. Sometimes it's just a deed with your name on it. So stay tuned, because this story, it isn't over yet. You ever notice how silence can be louder than shouting? It's louder than arguments, louder than doors slamming, louder than the sharp edge of a scream? That's what it felt like the day Karen realized I wasn't just her neighbor anymore. I was her landlord. She didn't scream. She didn't argue. She didn't even try to call the cops this time. She just froze, standing in her doorway like the world had tilted sideways and gravity no longer worked. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The silence hung between us, heavy, suffocating, thick with disbelief. And for the first time since, this whole saga began. It was me holding the power of silence. But the quiet didn't last. 2 days later, I opened my mailbox and found a letter. Not typed, not formal. Handwritten in cursive, The kind of cursive that tries to look elegant but trembles with anger. The loops were sharp. The lines pressed so hard into the page I could almost feel the rage radiating through the paper. It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a plea. It was a demand. Karen wrote that I needed to sell the house back to her. That it was unfair I had bought it. That I had tricked the bank. That I was ruining the neighborhood. Every line dripped with entitlement. Every word a refusal to accept reality. I didn't respond, not because I didn't have words, but because I had already learned something powerful. When someone builds their entire identity on control, the moment they lose it, they'll do anything to claw it back. They'll scramble, they'll grasp, they'll lash out. And Karen was grasping with both hands, desperate not to feel the ground slipping out from under her. But here's the thing. This story was no longer just about Karen. This was bigger. This was about what happens when you stand your ground, when you choose dignity over drama, when you refuse to be bullied into silence. And that's when the real work began. Karen's house, now my house, wasn't just a symbol, it was a wreck. The roof leaked like a sieve, mold spread in the basement like a disease. The electrical wiring looked like it had been installed by a blindfolded raccoon with a death wish. The place was crumbling from the inside out. So I did what had to be done. I brought in a crew, good men, hard workers, paid them fairly, gave them clear instructions, be respectful, be professional, and whatever you do, don't engage with her. But Karen didn't make it easy. Every morning without fail, she'd come outside. Arms crossed, lips pursed, eyes narrowed like lasers. She stood there, watching, muttering under her breath. Sometimes she slammed her door hard enough to rattle the glass. Sometimes she taped little notes to the mailbox, notes scrawled in the same trembling cursive. "This is my home. You'll never make it yours. You're destroying everything." It was like she couldn't decide if I was her enemy, her jailer, or her nightmare. Maybe I was all three, but things turned. Darker one afternoon, one of my workers, Sam, came to me. I'll never forget the look on his face. His hand shook as he spoke. "She threatened me," he said. "Told me if I didn't leave, she'd call immigration." That moment. That was the breaking point for me. This wasn't just petty notes or glares from across the yard anymore. This was ugly. This was cruel. I burned inside, but I kept my calm. I called Karen, asked to meet face to face. She refused. So I sat down and wrote my own letter. Not angry, not emotional. Just firm, direct. I told her harassment would not be tolerated, that if it continued, legal action would follow, that she had a choice, cooperate or face consequences. She never replied. But the next day, she was gone. Her car disappeared. Blinds were drawn. No lights flickered in the windows at night. It's just silence. Later, I learned she had moved in with her sister across town. She told anyone who would listen that she couldn't live under tyranny, that she was being persecuted, that I was destroying the community. Maybe in her mind, that was true. Maybe in her story, she was the victim, the hero fighting, the villain. But here's the twist. The community didn't see it that way. It started with a knock on the door. A neighbor I hadn't met before, standing there nervously.
Us.
She introduced herself, offered a smile, then asked how their renovations were going. A week later, another neighbor stopped by, then another. One woman, Linda, even brought cookies. She lowered her voice when she spoke, almost like she was afraid Karen might be listening from the shadows. "Honestly," she said, "we're relieved. She's made life miserable here for years. Thank you for standing up to her." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just my battle. This was their story too. For years, Karen had ruled this neighborhood with noise, with threats, with intimidation. She had fined people for the flowers they planted, threatened families for the dogs they owned. She bullied the HOA into submission, bending it to her will, convincing everyone that she was the law, even when she wasn't. And now, she was gone. I decided it was time to bring the people together. I hosted a block meeting. Nothing official. No agendas. No board. Just neighbors in a living room, sharing food and stories. What I heard broke my heart. One man told me, "Karen, Fined him $200 for planting tulips instead of roses. A young couple shared how she tried to evict them because their dog barked once too often. An elderly woman, voice trembling, said Karen told her she wasn't a good fit for the neighborhood and should consider selling her home. Every story peeled back another layer of paint, revealing the rot underneath. So I made a decision. A big one. I began buying more properties, not to dominate, not to control, but to liberate. Slowly, quietly, I started acquiring homes in the area, one at a time. I wanted to build something new, something different. A community where people felt respected, safe, heard, and that's when the letter arrived. Not from Karen, from her. The handwriting was different, neater, softer, the tone so. Unlike her mother's, she wrote that she was sorry. That she had seen what her mother had done to people. She had tried to stop her, but never could. And then she wrote something that floored me. You didn't just buy a house, she said. You gave people their voice back. I read that line again and again. I sat with it for a long time, because she was right. This was never just about property. It was never about real estate or deeds or renovations. This was about people. It's about dignity. About the quiet strength of doing what's right, even when it's hard. And if you're still here with me, I need you to hear this. You don't have to be the loudest in the room to be the strongest. You don't have to shout to be heard. Don't have to fight fire with fire. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand your ground, calmly, firmly, with grace. So let me ask you, have you ever faced someone who tried to silence you? Someone who tried to take away your voice, your space, your dignity? What did you do? How did you rise above it? Drop your story in the comments. Share it, because your story matters. Your voice matters. Together, we can rewrite the narrative. So, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And most of all, stay with me, because this journey isn't over yet. You ever feel the weight of a moment before it even happens? Like the air shifts, the silence thickens, and something deep in your gut whispers, this is it. That's how it felt the day I walked through the neighborhood, not as a stranger. Not as the guy Karen called the cops on. It's not even as a landlord, but as someone who had earned his place. The renovations were finally done. The duplex stood tall, brand new, alive, with fresh paint, sturdy walls, and a roof that could stand against any storm. Karen's old house had been restored too. No more leaks, no mold, no crumbling edges. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a home again. A symbol. A statement. But as I stood on that porch, the same porch where Karen once declared I'd regret this, I didn't feel bitterness. I didn't feel revenge. I didn't even feel triumph. What I felt was reflection. Because here's the thing. Regret is a funny word. People use it as a threat, a weapon, a way to control. Karen had thrown it at me like a curse. But standing there, I realized Di didn't regret a single thing. Still, I couldn't help but wonder, what happens to people like Karen when the shouting stops? When the flyers fade? When the power slips through their fingers and the mirror finally reflects the truth they've been running from? Turns out, I didn't have to wonder for long, because Karen came back, not with the police. Not with HOA threats. Not with another stack of flyers claiming she was saving the community. No, she came back quietly. One afternoon, I saw her car roll down the street. She didn't pull into the driveway. She didn't march up to my door. She just parked across the street and sat there watching. She watched the workers put finishing touches on the duplex. She watched neighbors wave at me, some even stopping to chat. She watched the world move forward without her at the center, and then she got out of the car. Her steps were slower this time. No storm in her walk. No fire in her eyes. She stopped. At the edge of the driveway, not 1 foot closer, just stood there. I didn't think you'd actually do it, she said, her voice low, almost soft. I didn't respond. She looked around, her eyes scanning the house, the yard, the porch she once stood on like a queen. It's beautiful, she whispered. Better than I ever kept it. Still, I said nothing, and then it happened. Something I never thought I'd hear. She said, I was wrong. 3 words. Simple, heavy, honest. She looked down at her hands. I thought I was protecting something, but I wasn't. I was just afraid. Afraid of change. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of being forgotten. And in that moment, I saw it. Not the Karen everyone whispered about. Not the HOA tyrant. Not the woman with flyers and fines and threats. I saw fear. Pure, human fear. Because fear builds walls. It invents enemies. It convinces you that the world is against you when really, it's just moving forward. She lifted her eyes. I know I don't deserve this. But, can I rent the house back? I'll pay on time. I'll stay quiet. I just need a place to start over. And here's where the story twists again. I said yes. Not because she deserved it. Not because I wanted to rub it in. But because sometimes the strongest thing you can do, the most powerful thing you can hold, isn't revenge, it's grace. So, she moved back in. Quietly. No more flyers. No more shouting. No more threats. It's just a woman trying to rebuild. In the neighborhood, it began to change. People started talking again, smiling again. Leads played outside without being scolded for. Chalk drawings on the sidewalk. The HOA restructured itself, new leaders stepping in, rewriting rules with fairness instead of fear. The whole community seemed to exhale like they'd been holding their breath for years and finally let it out. And me. I kept investing. Not just in houses, but in people, in stories, in second chances. Because this was never just about a Karen. This was about every person who's ever been silenced. Every voice that's ever been dismissed. Every neighbor who's ever been told you don't belong here, but the truth is, you do. You always did. And if you're still watching, I want you to hear me clearly. Your story matters. Your voice matters. Your presence matters. So I want you to think about this. What part of this story hit you the hardest? Was it the fight? The silence? The grace? What would you have done in my place? Just drop it in the comments below. Because your story deserves to be told too. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been told you're not enough, if you've ever had someone try to erase your rue, remember this? You don't need permission to exist. You don't need anyone's blessing to stand tall. You don't need approval to be who you are. What you need is courage. And sometimes courage looks like this. A quiet man, standing on a cracked driveway, holding a deed in his hand, and saying words that will echo forever. I'm not in your HOA. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.